For centuries, human history has been told in neat timelines, primitive beginnings, steady progress, and eventual breakthroughs in technology. Yet scattered across the earth are artifacts that should not exist, objects that whisper of civilizations far more advanced than we are taught to believe. They defy the narrative, they mock the textbooks, and they stand as silent rebels against the official version of history. At the center of this mystery lies a corroded lump of bronze, pulled from the depths of the Aegean Sea in 1901. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than the shattered remains of a shipwreck's cargo. But as archaeologists carefully pried it open, hidden within the encrusted rock were delicate gears, precision-tooled cogs, and an astonishingly complex network of interlocking wheels. This was the Antikythera mechanism. Over 100 years later, researchers finally pieced together its secret. The device was an ancient computer designed around 100 BCE, capable of predicting eclipses, charting the movement of planets, and tracking the cycles of the Olympic Games. Not merely a calendar, but a machine of almost modern sophistication. It should not have been possible. No records of such technology existed in that era. The precision engineering required lathes, metalworking skills, and astronomical knowledge we thought had only emerged nearly 1,500 years later. And yet, here it was undeniable, real, and older than Rome's empire at its peak. What's most haunting about the Antikythera mechanism is not just its existence, but its isolation. No other examples like it have been found. If it was a singular invention, it represents a mind centuries ahead of its time, an isolated genius whose work was lost in the shuffle of history. But if it was part of a broader tradition, then it hints at a civilization whose technical knowledge rivaled our own, erased so completely that only this one artifact survived. Either possibility is staggering, and it is not alone. Across the deserts of Iraq, fragments of clay jars have been unearthed that some believe to be ancient batteries. When reconstructed, these Baghdad batteries could have generated small amounts of electric current enough to electroplate objects with thin layers of metal. Imagine the implications. Electricity, not as a discovery of the modern age, but as a tool known in antiquity. Officially, historians dismiss this as coincidence, claiming the jars were simply used to store scrolls or liquids. Yet experimental reconstructions prove their electrical potential was real. If they were not batteries, then why did they work so perfectly as batteries? Then there are the stone spheres of Costa Rica, impossibly smooth and perfectly round, weighing up to 15 tons. Carved centuries before the arrival of Europeans, their function remains an enigma. Were they markers of astronomical alignments? Symbols of power? Or something far more technical, now hidden from our grasp? Their construction suggests a level of craftsmanship and measurement far beyond what indigenous tools of the time should have allowed. Each of these artifacts is like a spark against the dark canvas of history, flashes that suggest a greater fire we cannot yet see. They appear disconnected, one buried in the Mediterranean, another in Mesopotamian soil, another in the jungles of Central America, but together they form a pattern of knowledge lost. The Antikythera mechanism predicted celestial events with mathematical precision. The Baghdad battery hinted at control over energy. The spheres showed mastery of geometry. Alone, each one could be dismissed as an anomaly, but collectively, they paint a picture too consistent to ignore. It is as if our ancestors were not stumbling in the dark, but walking paths of brilliance, paths that were later erased, obscured, or deliberately forgotten. The deeper question is not whether these objects are real. They are, but why they exist at all. Were they the remnants of forgotten civilizations, erased by time or cataclysm? Were they flukes of genius, scattered individuals whose brilliance never took root? Or were they hints of something else, an inheritance of knowledge passed down, guarded, and then lost? When we place the Antikythera mechanism beside the polished precision of the Egyptian pyramids, the astronomical alignments of Stonehenge, or the megalithic structures of South America, a larger truth begins to emerge. Human history is not a straight line of progress. It is a jagged graph of peaks and valleys, of forgotten rises and deliberate erasures. Somewhere in our past, knowledge surged and then was buried. The first sparks of the impossible are not just curiosities in museums. They are cracks in the walls of the story we've been told. They remind us that history is fragile, that civilizations can climb to astonishing heights only to collapse into silence, leaving behind fragments that baffle future generations. And perhaps most unsettling of all, they suggest that what we call progress may not be a one-way journey forward. It may be a cycle in which knowledge is discovered, flourishes, and then disappears, only to be rediscovered centuries later, as if we are chasing the shadows of ancestors who already walked this path before us. The Antikythera mechanism was not meant to be found. It was meant to remain hidden, drowned beneath centuries of salt and silence. But it surfaced, just as others have, to remind us that the past may hold more advanced secrets than the present dares to believe. And this, as strange as it seems, is only the beginning. They called them gods, yet they walked the earth like men. Pharaohs, priest-kings, rishis cloaked in silence and ritual. Rulers who claimed their authority was not of human making, but inherited from forces beyond. To the common eye, their temples were places of worship. To the initiated, whispers claimed they were also machines, engines of power, running on knowledge that has since been erased. In Egypt, the records speak of statues that moved on their own, colossal effigies of the gods that did not merely sit in silence, but were said to nod, speak, and even walk when called upon by the priests. Historians dismiss these accounts as symbolic exaggerations. Yet ancient witnesses described something different, a mechanical reality concealed behind ritual smoke and chants. The philosopher Hieron of Alexandria, centuries later, detailed devices that opened temple doors automatically when a fire was lit on the altar, a mechanism using pressure, heat, and hidden weights. If such ingenuity existed in the Hellenistic age, how much older could its origins have been? The Egyptians themselves never claimed invention. They credited their gods. To them, the movement of a statue was not a trick of levers, but a sign of divine presence. Yet the line between technology and magic is often drawn by perspective. What if the god kings had inherited mechanical knowledge far beyond their time, knowledge so potent that it allowed them to blur that line entirely? Mesopotamia offers another trail of evidence. Among the ruins of Ur in Babylon, fragments of clay tablets describe living images crafted for temples. These were not mere carvings. Rituals spoke of opening the mouth, a ceremony by which the statue was animated, made capable of seeing, hearing, and even acting. Scholars interpret these rites as symbolic empowerment. But what if these rituals cloaked something more literal? Could hidden mechanisms, pulleys, hydraulics, or even early forms of automation have been the true secret? Imagine a priest pulling a concealed lever as incense smoke thickened the air, and suddenly the idol's eyes glowed with fire, or its arm moved in benediction. For a people who believed their king stood between them and the divine, such a spectacle would not be theater. It would be proof. And then India. Ancient Sanskrit texts are littered with accounts of machines, or yantras, crafted with precision beyond ordinary craftsmanship. The Vaimanika Shastra, though dismissed by modern scholars as a later forgery, preserves echoes of something older. Flying machines powered by mercury, machines that hummed with life. Even in orthodox scriptures, like the Mahabharata, we read descriptions of self-moving chariots, weapons that seemed to think for themselves, and palaces that floated in the air. Were these the fevered visions of poets, or distorted memory of real technologies guarded by rishis and kings? There is one striking parallel across these civilizations: the insistence that their greatest wonders were not inventions, but inheritances. The pharaohs claimed wisdom from Thoth, the god of knowledge. The Mesopotamians looked to Enki, the keeper of secrets. The Indians spoke of devas and sages descending from the stars. What is one to make of this? Either humanity across the ancient world conspired to weave the same illusion, or they all preserved fragments of the same truth. Take the Temple of Abydos in Egypt. On the walls of its columns, curious carvings appear, shapes that resemble a helicopter, a submarine, even a fighter jet. Dismissed by most as palimpsest, layers of hieroglyphs overwritten, they nonetheless fuel speculation. Could the Egyptians have encoded memories of technologies long vanished? If statues could walk, if palaces could fly, then perhaps these were not fantasies, but echoes of machines whose engines have long been silenced. Consider also the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck off Greece. A device of gears so intricate that modern engineers required X-ray scans to unravel its design. Scholars now agree it was an astronomical calculator, centuries ahead of its time. But what is most unsettling is not its function. It is its isolation. No other machine like it survived. As if someone somewhere had glimpsed a fragment of forgotten knowledge and then lost it again. How many such machines had disappeared? Buried beneath sand and ash, dismissed as myth, or locked away in vaults of the powerful? To rule as a god-king required more than gold and armies. It required awe. And awe, in the ancient world, was born from mystery, the sight of stone coming alive, the impossible made real before the eyes of the faithful. The question is not whether ancient kings possessed mechanical marvels. The question is whether they were the last guardians of something older, perhaps remnants of a lost civilization, one that understood the marriage of spirit and machine in ways we have only begun to rediscover. Today, we design humanoid robots, automate voices, and build machines that mimic life. To us, it is technology. To those who first beheld it thousands of years ago, it was divinity. The god-kings did not merely rule with armies. They ruled with engines of awe, engines we no longer understand, yet whose shadows still haunt the ruins of their temples. Throughout history, whispers of ancient technologies have surfaced in fragments, artifacts that should not exist, carvings that depict the impossible, and devices that seem to mock our modern arrogance. Among them stands a strange legacy, the suggestion that ancient civilizations may have grasped the power of electricity long before the modern world struck its first spark. It begins with a clay jar, small, unassuming, and cracked by centuries of silence. Discovered near Baghdad in the 1930s, this vessel contained a copper cylinder, an iron rod, and traces of acidic residue. To most, it was nothing more than pottery. But to those who studied it carefully, the so-called Baghdad battery appeared to be a power source rudimentary, yes, but astonishing in its implications. Could such a device have powered lamps, plated metals, or even energized tools thousands of years ago? Skeptics argue it was a mere container, its resemblance to a battery nothing more than coincidence. Yet, when replicas are built using the same materials, they produce a measurable charge, enough to prove that the principle was understood. If it was truly a battery, then the history of electricity is far older and far stranger than we are taught to believe. But the Baghdad battery is only the beginning. Travel westward, deep into the temples of Egypt, and one encounters carvings in the Hathor temple at Dendra that depict what look uncannily like elongated bulbs, complete with filaments and cords. Known today as the Dendra light, these hieroglyphs ignite one of the most contested debates in archaeology. Were these mere symbols, abstract representations of creation and divinity, or were they technical diagrams, encoded in stone? Those who dismiss the possibility of ancient electricity claim the images are stylized lotuses, their curling stems symbolizing cosmic energy. But when viewed through the lens of engineering, the resemblance to a modern light bulb is undeniable. What is more unsettling? In an era that supposedly knew only fire and shadow, Why would artisans depict something so alien to their time? And the mysteries do not stop there. In scattered ruins across Mesopotamia and beyond, archaeologists have unearthed strange glass tubes, scorched at the edges as though once exposed to intense heat. These fragments defy easy categorization. Some suggest they were part of unknown alchemical experiments, others that they were components of energy devices lost to time. They may have shattered during experiments gone wrong, echoes of a knowledge, half remembered, half destroyed. Taken together, these relics sketch an unsettling picture. Scattered across the cradle of civilization are hints that humanity once played with fire of another kind, fire, not born of flame, but of invisible currents. Fire that spoke in sparks and pulses. The question is not merely whether these devices worked. The deeper question is, how did such knowledge vanish? If the ancients indeed commanded electricity, why was it lost, only to be rediscovered thousands of years later? Was it hidden deliberately, entrusted to secret societies who swore to guard it until humanity was ready? Or did cataclysmic events erase not only cities and empires, but also the very memory of their technologies? There are stories, half history, half legend, that describe civilizations rising to brilliance before collapsing into silence. The Atlantean myths, for instance, speak of power harnessed from crystals and energies drawn from the earth itself. Skeptical historians dismiss these as fables. Yet when confronted with artifacts like the Baghdad battery or the Dendra carvings, the line between fable and fact blurs. Even modern science adds weight to the mystery. Experiments have shown that ancient methods of electroplating metals covering objects with thin layers of gold were possible with primitive batteries. Could the jewelry of kings, gleaming unnaturally bright, have been produced by devices we once thought impossible for their time? If so, the shimmering relics in museums are not just symbols of wealth, but silent proof of forgotten science. What emerges is a paradox. The further we dig into the ruins of the past, the more advanced it begins to look. And yet, this advancement exists only in fragments, never in continuity. A battery here, a lamp-like carving there, a shattered glass tube in another corner of the earth. Alone, each piece can be dismissed. Together, they form a mosaic too strange to ignore. And perhaps that is the real lesson hidden within these artifacts. The ancients may not have been masters of electricity in the way we are today, but they may have touched it, experimented with it, felt the edges of its potential. For a brief moment, civilizations might have harnessed the invisible fire that now powers our world, only to let it slip away. Imagine the torch of knowledge being passed forward, only to be dropped into darkness. That darkness lasted thousands of years. When modern scientists finally stumbled upon electricity again, they may have been lighting a fire humanity had once already kindled, the fire that spoke, the fire that could illuminate night and power creation, the fire that might have lifted ancient civilizations into brilliance before silence swept over them. And so the question lingers. Were the ancients merely dreamers, carving symbolic myths into stone? Or were they scientists of their time, whispering their discoveries through artifacts we barely recognize? One thing is certain, our history is not as linear as we once believed. The Baghdad battery hums faintly in memory. The Dendra light glows, however dimly, across the centuries. And the shards of glass, blackened by forgotten experiments, wait silently in the earth, as though daring us to rediscover what was lost. Beneath the dust of crumbled temples and buried ruins, archaeologists have stumbled upon objects that seem to defy the very timeline of human progress. Perfectly carved gears, machine-like components, and alloys that should not exist in the age they were found. They lie scattered in forgotten corners of the world, silent whispers of industries that once thrived, only to be erased from history's official script. In the ruins of Mesopotamia, fragments of what appear to be precision-cut wheels have been unearthed, stones bored with such accuracy that even modern tools would struggle to replicate their symmetry. These finds are not dismissed as mistakes of nature, for the edges reveal the unmistakable hand of craftsmanship. Yet the civilization they belong to should not have possessed the metallurgy, nor the mathematics, to create such perfection. One of the most confounding discoveries is the so-called Baghdad battery. At first glance, it appears to be a simple clay jar, but within it lies a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When reconstructed, it produces a small electrical charge. Scholars debate its purpose. Was it used for electroplating, for ritual, or as some forgotten form of technology? Whatever its function, it suggests an understanding of science far beyond what was believed possible 2,000 years ago. Further west, in the ruins of ancient Greece, lies another enigma, the Antikythera mechanism. Pulled from the depths of the Aegean Sea, this corroded mass of bronze has revealed itself to be an astronomical calculator of stunning complexity. Its gears, arranged with astonishing precision, could predict the movements of the planets and even forecast eclipses. This device should not exist in the 1st century BCE, and yet it does. It stands as undeniable proof that advanced mechanical engineering was not only understood, but mastered long before the Industrial Revolution. But perhaps the most unsettling discoveries come from the stones themselves, blocks cut with machine-like precision, drilled holes smooth as glass, and patterns that mimic the signatures of modern tools. In the quarries of Egypt, granite blocks weighing tons bear circular drill marks spiraling deep into the stone. These cuts were made with a force and speed that primitive copper chisels could never achieve. And yet, history books tell us they had nothing more advanced. Some researchers suggest that these anomalies are mere coincidences, errors of interpretation, or accidents of nature. But to others, they are fragments of a forgotten story, a reminder that the past may not be as primitive as we have been taught. Consider the mysterious artifacts of the Indus Valley, where tiny stone seals bear intricate designs carved at a microscopic scale. To etch such detail would require tools of extraordinary fineness, tools that have never been found, yet the results remain undeniable. Were these merely symbolic decorations, or evidence of a lost industry where precision engineering was commonplace? The echoes of these lost wheels and gears stretch across continents. In South America, at sites like Pumapunku, stone blocks fit together with such accuracy that even a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. The angles, the interlocking joints, the precision at all points to a mastery of engineering that contradicts the supposed capabilities of the Andean cultures at the time. What connects these finds is not only their mystery, but the silence surrounding them. For centuries, artifacts that do not conform to the official timeline are pushed aside, labeled as anomalies, or locked away in museum archives without explanation. The narrative of human history, neat and linear, leaves no room for industries that should not exist, nor for machines that predate the societies capable of making them. And yet, these wheels of the forgotten civilizations persist silent, undeniable, and haunting. They remind us that progress is not always linear. That knowledge may rise, flourish, and vanish, leaving only fragments for us to rediscover. Perhaps these were the remnants of a lost golden age, an age where science and spirituality merged, where human ingenuity reached heights we cannot yet comprehend. Or perhaps they belonged to civilizations erased by catastrophe, their technologies buried under waves, fires, and time itself. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. These discoveries force us to question the story we have been told. History, as it is written, may not be the full truth. Beneath the soil and within the stones lie traces of machines, industries, and intellects far older and far stranger than our textbooks admit. And so the gears turn silently, invisibly beckoning us toward a past that refuses to be forgotten. For most of history, the dream of flight belonged to gods, not men. The sky was a realm reserved for the divine thunder-wielding deities, sun chariots, and winged messengers. And yet, scattered across the world, fragments of the past suggest that humanity may have once known the mechanics of the heavens. The question is not merely whether flight was imagined, but whether it was remembered. One of the most striking clues lies in Egypt, within the tomb of Saqqara. Archaeologists uncovered a wooden artifact, small and delicate, dating back more than 2,000 years. At first glance, it looked like a bird carved wings, a tail, a body. But closer inspection revealed something uncanny. Its tail was vertical, not horizontal, more like a rudder than a bird's feathers. Its wings, curved in a manner resembling modern gliders, lacked the features of natural plumage. Was this simply a child's toy, or could it have been a scale model of something that once cut across the Egyptian sky? Engineers who built replicas found that, under the right conditions, the so-called Saqqara bird could actually glide. If the Egyptians carved birds with aerodynamics in mind, they were not alone. Half a world away, in Colombia, golden figurines known as the Kumbaya artifacts continue to puzzle researchers. These small, intricate models date back over 1,000 years, crafted by pre-Columbian artisans. Some resemble insects or animals, but others look strikingly different, like sleek, metallic airplanes with wings, stabilizers, and tails. Modern engineers, fascinated by these designs, have scaled them up and found that their proportions allow for actual flight. Were these ornaments symbols of gods, offerings to the sky, or miniatures of machines the ancients once saw in action? The pattern deepens when we turn to myth. In India's Vedic texts, we find descriptions of the Vimanas flying palaces, radiant and thunderous, powered by mechanisms that sound suspiciously mechanical. These were not merely poetic metaphors for clouds or comets. Sanskrit writings describe their construction, their propulsion, even aerial battles waged between them. They are said to move by fire and mercury, engines that hiss and roar, piloted by men who could cross the heavens. While mainstream historians regard the Vimanas as myth, the level of detail has left some researchers unsettled. Could they be echoes of lost technology? The Greeks, too, told stories of flying chariots. Helios crossed the sky each day in his sun-driven vehicle. Daedalus fashioned wings of wax and feather, hinting at mankind's yearning to return to a lost craft. The Norse spoke of Freya's chariot drawn by cats across the clouds. To skeptics, these are allegories, religious metaphors cloaked in poetry. Yet, when myths across continents echo the same theme machines of the sky, it is difficult to dismiss them entirely as coincidence. In more recent centuries, strange manuscripts emerged, adding fuel to the enigma. Leonardo da Vinci, hailed as a man ahead of his time, sketched designs of flying machines in the 15th century. He studied the flight of birds obsessively, but his imagination seemed haunted by something more than curiosity. His aerial screw, resembling a helicopter, and his glider wings were ideas that should have belonged centuries later. Was Leonardo merely a genius of intuition, or had whispers of forgotten knowledge reached him through texts long since lost? The concept of lost blueprints surfaces again and again. Ancient cave paintings in Central America depict figures soaring in winged contraptions. A Mayan temple carving shows what some interpret as a pilot seated in a capsule, complete with breathing apparatus, hands gripping levers. Most scholars dismiss it as stylized symbolism. Yet for those who look closer, the imagery feels uncomfortably modern. Skeptics argue that humans see patterns where none exist, projecting modern technology onto ancient art. And perhaps that is true in some cases. Yet the persistence of these patterns across cultures, the Saqqara bird, the Quimbaya plains, the detailed Vimanas, suggests something deeper. Were these societies simply inspired by the flight of birds? Or had they witnessed machines that vanished into legend? If such knowledge once existed, what became of it? Perhaps it was lost to cataclysm. Civilizations have risen and fallen countless times, each leaving fragments buried beneath the sands of time. The Library of Alexandria, said to hold the wisdom of the ancient world, burned to ash. Could designs of flight have perished with it? Or were they hidden deliberately, locked away by priesthoods who feared the misuse of power? After all, the sky is not merely a symbol of freedom, it is a weapon. Those who rule the air rule the world. Some modern theorists go further, suggesting these ancient machines were not human at all, but observations of visitors from beyond. If beings descended from the stars in shining craft, how would early societies describe them? Likely as gods, chariots of fire, or palaces in the heavens. Over time, memory blurs into myth, myth hardens into scripture, and scripture becomes untouchable. Yet beneath the poetry may lie a record of something real. We stand at an uncomfortable crossroads of interpretation. Either ancient civilizations, without metallurgy or engines, dreamt astonishingly accurate visions of flight, or fragments of a forgotten technology once existed, only to be swallowed by time. The Saqqara bird still rests in its museum case, silent and unmoving. The golden airplanes of Columbia gleam under glass. Manuscripts and carvings remain etched in stone, awaiting those who dare to look beyond metaphor. The machines of the sky may be gone, their roar silenced by centuries. But in the artifacts, in the myths, in the symbols scattered across cultures, a whisper remains. A reminder that the dream of flight might not have begun with us, that perhaps, long before the Wright brothers took to the air, others had already risen, soaring into the clouds, leaving only shadows of their engines behind. Beneath the rolling waves lies a silence that feels almost deliberate, as if the ocean is guarding secrets too ancient, too dangerous to be revealed. For centuries, sailors and divers have stumbled upon shapes that defy explanation, machines that should not exist, and structures that feel less like nature's design and more like the hand of something deliberate. Some call them ruins. Others insist they are remnants of forgotten civilizations whose technology slipped beneath the sea long before recorded history began. The most famous of these enigmas rests off the coast of Japan, at a site known as the Yonaguni Monument. Submerged in the waters of Okinawa, the massive stone formation appears almost carved with mathematical precision. Terraces, stairways, and platforms stacked like the blueprints of a forgotten city. Officially, scientists argue it is a natural formation, sculpted over thousands of years by tectonic activity and erosion. Yet divers who descend into its depths describe features that defy coincidence. Perfect 90-degree angles, archways, and pathways aligned like engineered corridors. Was Yonaguni merely a quirk of geology? Or could it have been a machine, perhaps even a kind of hydraulic complex, a system designed to channel water or energy in ways modern science has yet to rediscover? Legends of Atlantis speak of vast networks of machinery hidden beneath the waves, engines that harness the sea itself. Ancient texts whisper of crystal-powered devices and canals built not for transport, but for controlling tides, currents, and storms. To skeptics, these are myths. But to those who study the impossible, these stories align with discoveries like Yonaguni, evidence not of random chance, but of purposeful engineering drowned by time. Further west, in the waters of the Mediterranean, lies another clue, the Antikythera mechanism. Though it was not discovered underwater as a towering structure, it was retrieved from the wreckage of a ship lost 2,000 years ago. This complex bronze device is often called the world's first computer, a gear-driven machine capable of predicting eclipses and tracking celestial cycles. If one ship carried such a device, how many more secrets of mechanical mastery now rest quietly on the seafloor, corroded and forgotten? If humanity could construct such precision 2 millennia ago, who is to say older civilizations, now erased from the surface, had not gone further, building machines capable of ruling not only the stars, but the oceans themselves? And then there are the strange anomalies recorded by deep-sea sonar. Off the coast of Cuba in the early 2000s, researchers claimed to detect massive stone-like structures nearly 2,000 feet below the surface. Walls, pyramids, and even what appeared to be roads, all at a depth where no known civilization could have built. While skeptics dismiss these reports as misinterpretations of sonar data, others suggest they point toward a drowned city, one that might have housed technologies we cannot imagine. Were these cities powered by machines that have since rusted into the silence of the deep? Or are they still there, waiting, their mechanisms preserved in darkness? Maritime folklore adds another layer to this mystery. Tales of strange humming noises beneath ships, metallic clanking rising from nowhere, and ghostly lights flickering deep underwater have haunted sailors for centuries. Modern explanations point to shifting tectonic plates, volcanic activity, or schools of fish vibrating in mass. Yet the eeriness of these accounts lingers. Could these sounds belong not to natural forces, but to ancient machines still at work, their purpose long forgotten? Machines that perhaps once generated energy, or channeled it from the ocean floor, now running endlessly without human oversight. Even the oceans themselves appear almost engineered. Consider the precision of currents, vast rivers within the sea that follow stable paths for millennia. What if these currents are not wholly natural, but influenced by long-forgotten systems hidden deep below? The possibility may seem far-fetched, but so did the Antikythera mechanism when it was first uncovered, an artifact that should not have existed according to everything historians believed. The unsettling truth is this: the ocean is the perfect hiding place. Unlike land, where ruins are unearthed, studied, and catalogued, the sea guards its relics with crushing pressure and darkness. 95% of the ocean remains unexplored, a staggering expanse where entire civilizations could lie untouched. If there were machines powerful enough to alter landscapes, pump water, or even act as primitive submarines, they would not need to survive in working order. Their remnants alone, carved stone channels, metallic fragments, geometric alignments, would be enough to hint at their existence. And those remnants, as divers have begun to discover, are there. Perhaps the most haunting idea is that some of these machines never stopped working. Some theorists suggest that natural anomalies, the mysterious disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle, unexplained magnetic fields that interfere with compasses, or strange pulses detected by naval equipment, may not be natural at all. Instead, they may be side effects of mechanisms built thousands of years ago, machines still quietly humming in the abyss, carrying out tasks their creators intended. When you listen closely to the ocean, there are sounds no creature can explain. Rhythmic beats like the turning of gears, pulses like the breathing of colossal engines, echoing from places no diver has ever reached. It raises the question: did ancient civilizations leave behind machines so advanced that they now seem indistinguishable from the natural rhythms of the earth itself? Or are we mistaking the heartbeat of something artificial for the music of the deep? The ocean is not empty. It is filled with voices, shapes, and machines that should not exist. And for every discovery made, Yonaguni, Antikythera, Cuba's sunken formations, there are thousands still hidden, waiting to be revealed. The sea remembers what the land forgets. Perhaps one day, in some uncharted depth, we will find the final evidence that ancient machines were not myths, but reality. Machines that once commanded oceans, and maybe still do. Metal is civilization's true signature. Stone can be found in any age, wood rots, but metal tells you exactly how far a society has come. Bronze marks the early cities, iron defines empires, and steel builds worlds. Yet what if the ladder of progress did not rise as neatly as we were taught? What if, scattered across the ruins of forgotten cultures, there lies evidence of metallurgy so advanced it should not exist? Consider the Iron Pillar of Delhi, standing for over 1,600 years, exposed to rain, heat, and the choking air of one of the world's busiest cities. It should have corroded into nothing. But it has not. The pillar resists rust through an alloying technique scientists only fully explained in the late 20th century. How could ancient blacksmiths, with no modern chemistry, forge a recipe so advanced that it still challenges metallurgists today? Was this the stroke of genius from an anonymous artisan, or the faint echo of a deeper, more ancient tradition of metallurgy, one now buried in myth? And then there are the impossible cuts. At sites in Egypt, Peru, and India, granite blocks harder than steel bear machine-level precision. Straight lines, smooth bores, surfaces polished as if by diamond tools. Official explanations speak of hours of hand chiseling, ropes, and sand. But stand before these stones yourself, and the illusion collapses. No bronze tool could carve them. No primitive workshop could polish them to that standard. These were made with something else, something that feels closer to a factory than a quarry. Across the deserts of Iran lies another anomaly, fragments of what may be ancient batteries. Clay jars lined with copper and iron, producing small currents when filled with acidic liquid. Known as the Baghdad batteries, they hint at experiments with electrochemistry at least 2,000 years ago. Critics dismiss them as curiosities, perhaps containers for scrolls or sacred oil. But if they were nothing more, why design them in a way that so closely mirrors the principles of modern galvanic cells? And if they truly powered something, what machinery did they feed? Lamps? Electroplating devices? Something stranger? Something lost? Metallurgy, after all, is more than just shaping weapons and tools. It is the key to engineering itself. The gears of Antikythera, discovered in a shipwreck off the Greek islands, are cut with such precision that clockmakers in the 18th century would have been proud to claim them. And yet this artifact, dated to over 2,000 years ago, suggests a workshop capable of producing gear teeth accurate to a fraction of a millimeter. Such precision requires hardened bronze or steel tools. But history says those workshops did not exist. The Antikythera mechanism whispers that they did. Even myths preserve the memory of forbidden forges. In Greek legend, Hephaestus worked in subterranean foundries, hammering out weapons for the gods. In Indian texts, celestial metals are described, resistant to decay and brighter than gold. The Norse spoke of dwarves who forged unbreakable chains and weapons that never dulled. Were these merely stories or cultural memories of real alloys, real techniques, and perhaps real tools, now lost to the erosion of time? The deeper you look, the harder it is to dismiss these fragments as coincidence. The iron pillar that defies rust, the granite blocks sliced as if by diamond blades, the Baghdad batteries humming quietly in the desert, the Antikythera mechanism ticking away beneath the waves. Each one is an outlier. Together, they form a pattern, a suggestion that entire chapters of human knowledge may have been erased, rewritten, or buried. And if that is true, then the question becomes unavoidable. Who were the blacksmiths behind this forbidden forge? Were they ancient geniuses scattered across time, inventing in isolation only for their techniques to vanish at their deaths? Or were they inheritors of something older, knowledge passed down through hidden schools, secret guilds, or even civilizations that predated the very histories we are taught? Modern science tries to reassemble the puzzle, but it does so cautiously, as though afraid of the picture it may reveal. It says the iron pillar's resistance was accidental, a quirk of high phosphorus. It says the granite was worked with primitive perseverance. It says the Baghdad batteries are misunderstood jars. But to believe all of these are coincidences is to ignore the sheer weight of improbability. The odds are overwhelming that something else was happening, something that doesn't fit the linear march of progress. Perhaps the most unsettling thought is this: if ancient civilizations had already mastered techniques that rivaled our own, what became of them? Why did they not build machines, factories, and cities of steel that lasted into the present? Did some catastrophe erase their progress? Did some power decide that such knowledge was too dangerous to leave in the hands of the masses? Or perhaps, and this is the darkest possibility, they did build such things. They did master alloys and machines. And what we find today, the scattered relics in stone and restless iron, are not beginnings at all, but the ashes of an age that burned itself out. The forge, then, is forbidden not because we cannot see it, but because we are not meant to. Knowledge hidden in plain sight, guarded by myths, dismissed by scholars, or simply lost beneath the weight of centuries. But every now and then, a piece of it slips through. A gear, a pillar, a jar of copper and clay. And with each discovery, the illusion of human history as a straight upward climb grows thinner. Metal never lies, and the metals of the ancients whisper that someone, somewhere, was far ahead of their time. Perhaps too far. In the ancient world, gods were never simply beings of flesh and spirit. They were often described as engineers, builders, and craftsmen, entities that commanded not only the forces of nature, but the mechanics of creation itself. Across cultures, stories appear of divine figures crafting machines so advanced that even today they feel less like myth and more like echoes of lost technology. The Greeks spoke of Hephaestus, the god of fire and the forge, whose workshop was said to resound with the clatter of hammers, bellows, and gears. But Hephaestus did not work alone. Ancient texts tell of his golden automata, self-moving servants, sculpted with divine precision, who walked, spoke, and even thought for themselves. These were not crude statues, but living machines, guardians of Olympus, and extensions of a god's will. Homer himself described them, not as metaphors, but as entities of metal infused with intellect. In a world without electricity, engines, or robotics, how could such an image exist? Were these stories poetic flourishes or fragmented memories of machines long forgotten? Half a world away, the Chinese chroniclers spoke of emperors guarded by clockwork guardians. In the courts of the Han Dynasty, mechanical animals, lifelike birds that flapped their wings, or wooden men that served wine, dazzled guests and visitors. These were marvels of ingenuity, yes, but they also suggest a deeper tradition, the blending of divinity, rulership, and machinery. For the ancients, a machine was not a neutral object. It was sacred, alive with mystery, its movements inseparable from the will of heaven itself. Even the Sumerians, among the earliest civilizations, spoke of beings and constructs that blurred the boundary between biology and mechanism. In their tablets, there are descriptions of entities that sound eerily mechanical. Colossal guardians of temples, described with gleaming bodies, eyes that shone like fire, and motions like wheels turning in unison. Some scholars dismiss these passages as symbolic, but others argue that they may describe something more tangible, machines or mechas, animated not by myth, but by some form of ancient technology we can no longer comprehend. It is easy to forget that the ancients were not ignorant dreamers. They were observers, careful chroniclers of the world around them. Their myths, though wrapped in metaphor, may conceal truths about encounters with mechanisms that defy their own technical knowledge. When the Greeks spoke of automatons, when the Chinese described lifelike machines, and when the Sumerians recorded mechanical guardians, they were not describing simple fantasies. They were preserving memories, stories passed down from moments when humanity glimpsed the impossible. The question, then, is unsettling. Where did these machines come from? Were they the creations of men whose skills have been erased by time, or were they gifts from something far older and far stranger than we dare to imagine? The story of Talos, the bronze giant of Crete, makes this question sharper. Talos was not born, but forged. A colossal guardian who patrolled the island's shores. His body gleamed with bronze, and a single vein of ichor, the lifeblood of the gods, ran through him, sealed by a nail. Was this ichor a metaphor for divine power, or a primitive description of energy coursing through a mechanical body? The tale of Talos stands at the border of mythology and engineering, as though the Greeks had preserved, in mythic form, the memory of a machine both wondrous and terrifying. Consider, too, the strange continuity of these myths. From Greece to China, from Mesopotamia to India, the pattern repeats. Gods with mechanical helpers, rulers guarded by lifelike machines, guardians described in the language of gears, fire, and shining metal. These parallels suggest not coincidence, but convergence. Different civilizations, isolated by distance and language, recalling the same archetype, machines so advanced that they became indistinguishable from the divine. Modern scholars often brush these stories aside as allegories. But allegory does not explain the precision. Allegory does not explain why Homer described golden robots, why Chinese artisans built automata that mimicked life, or why Sumerian tablets describe shining beings whose movements echoed the mechanics of wheels. There is a pattern here, a pattern too sharp to ignore. Perhaps the ancients did not invent these machines, but encountered them. Imagine a fragment of a lost civilization, one that mastered mechanics and engineering long before recorded history. Their creations, glimpsed by early peoples, would have seemed divine, their technology beyond comprehension. Over generations, those memories would twist into myth, transforming engineers into gods and machines into servants of heaven. And perhaps those machines were not remnants of humanity at all, but of something alien. If a visitor from beyond left behind even a fragment of their creations, how would ancient eyes describe it? They would not see circuits and engines. They would see magic. They would see gods. They would see the gears of heaven itself. The myths of Hephaestus, of Talos, of Sumerian guardians and Chinese clockwork may not be fantasies. They may be whispers, warnings, or fragments of a history deliberately erased. A history in which gods walked among men, not as spirits of cloud and fire, but as masters of machines. If so, then the question is not whether the ancients dreamed too boldly. The question is whether we, in our modern arrogance, have forgotten truths they tried desperately to preserve. For in their myths, wrapped in poetry and divine metaphor, they left us a riddle, a reminder that the gods may not have been gods at all, but engineers of a world we no longer understand. Throughout history, whispers have persisted of machines so advanced, so uncanny, that they could not possibly belong to the times in which they appeared. Devices capable of harnessing natural forces, predicting celestial alignments with impossible precision, or generating energy without fire or fuel. And yet, for every tantalizing trace of such machines, one theme repeats: their sudden disappearance. These inventions arrive briefly in the historical record, then vanish as if swallowed by the earth itself. The question is not only what these machines were, but why they are missing. Was their absence accidental, the result of natural disasters, fires, and the simple decay of centuries? Or was it deliberate knowledge stolen, locked away, or destroyed before humanity could advance too far, too quickly? One of the most striking examples lies in the Antikythera mechanism, a device discovered in the wreckage of an ancient Greek shipwreck. Scholars now understand it as an intricate analog computer, capable of tracking lunar cycles, eclipses, and planetary alignments with breathtaking accuracy. Yet, if such a machine existed in Greece around 100 BC, why did no others survive? Why do we see no evidence of its replication or refinement for over 1,000 years? Was it truly an isolated miracle, or was it the remnant of a forgotten tradition of mechanical genius snuffed out before it could spread? History suggests that knowledge often disappears under suspicious circumstances. The Library of Alexandria, humanity's greatest archive of ancient thought, was burned and sacked multiple times. Among the papyrus scrolls reduced to ash may have been schematics, diagrams, and descriptions of machines we cannot even imagine. When a single library held the accumulated wisdom of civilizations, its destruction was not just an accident of history, it was an erasure. What ideas, what technologies, were lost in that fire, leaving behind only faint rumors of devices that could move mountains or capture the lightning of the sky. Even medieval texts hinted machines that feel out of place in their own age. Arabic manuscripts speak of elaborate automata, mechanical birds that sang, fountains that changed patterns, and doors that opened with intricate gears. Some descriptions border on the unbelievable devices that seemed almost alive, crafted from bronze and wood centuries before modern robotics. Where are these machines now? Why do we not see them preserved, displayed, replicated? Were they dismantled as curiosities? Or did rulers fear what such inventions might mean if knowledge of their construction spread too widely? Suppression is a pattern. History tells us that power has always had a complicated relationship with technology. Rulers, priests, and empires thrive on control. When knowledge threatens to shift the balance, it is often silenced. The Catholic Church, for centuries, censored texts deemed dangerous. Inventors accused of heresy saw their work confiscated or destroyed. Imagine a machine capable of producing limitless energy in the 15th century. Would it have been celebrated or condemned as witchcraft? Would its inventor have lived to share it or been silenced in the name of order? Then there is the problem of cataclysm. Entire civilizations have fallen to disastrous volcanic eruptions, floods, earthquakes, invasions. With them, their machines vanish, buried under ash or left to rust in ruins. What if the legendary Baghdad battery was not unique, but one of many? What if ancient civilizations had already experimented with electrical energy, but their tools were swallowed by collapsing empires, leaving only scattered artifacts for us to misinterpret? Modern archaeology occasionally stumbles upon such hints. Strange carvings that resemble light bulbs in Egyptian temples. Out-of-place artifacts that suggest machining far older than metallurgy should allow. Stone blocks so perfectly cut, they seem to defy the crude tools attributed to their makers. Were these remnants of vanished machines? Were they once part of larger systems, engines, generators, devices now reduced to dust? The silence of history is not accidental. Too many discoveries have slipped from public record into obscurity. Private collectors, secret archives, even government vaults may hold fragments of machines that never reached museums. Think of the countless artifacts stored away, labeled as anomalous, unfit for display because they do not fit the accepted timeline of progress. What if those drawers and warehouses contain the missing links, the pieces of machines that once hummed, turned, and glowed, only to be hidden because they raised uncomfortable questions? Consider also the psychology of disappearance. Sometimes it is not rulers or disasters, but the inventors themselves who ensure their work vanishes. Nikola Tesla dreamed of free wireless energy, but his greatest experiments were dismantled after his death. What if the same pattern happened centuries earlier? Inventors silenced, not by flames or flood, but by secrecy choosing to destroy their machines, rather than let them fall into the wrong hands. Each disappearance adds weight to the mystery. The machines that should have been replicated, studied, improved, instead remain singular. A clock without a lineage. A mechanism without successors. An artifact so advanced it appears like an intruder in its own time. A narrative of progress slow, steady, evolutionary begins to fracture when these anomalies appear. For every missing machine, we see not just absence, but erasure. So the question grows, how much of history is missing because it was meant to be missing? Did the world's rulers suppress these machines to maintain their grip on power? Did cataclysms erase entire chapters of technological brilliance? Or are the answers still out there hidden in vaults, buried under ruins, waiting for the day when their secrets are revealed? Until then, the vanished machines remain both possibility and warning. They tell us that progress is not inevitable. It is fragile, vulnerable to fire, to greed, to silence. And when knowledge disappears, humanity does not just lose inventions, we lose futures that might have been. For centuries, fragments of human history have suggested that there was once a world where machines of unimaginable scale and power existed. Not machines of steel and silicon as we know them today, but something far stranger. Something that blurred the line between technology and the natural world, between invention and creation itself. Hidden within ruins, scattered across sacred texts, and whispered in esoteric traditions, there lies the memory of what some call the final machine. Theories about this machine vary. Some claim it was never a machine in the conventional sense, but rather a vast global network, a lattice of stone, metal, and energy that bound ancient civilizations together. Others suggest it was an engine of pure transformation, able to harness forces we no longer understand, electromagnetic currents, sound harmonics, or even the very fabric of consciousness itself. What is certain, however, is that across cultures separated by oceans and millennia, echoes of this idea appear again and again. Consider the great megaliths. The pyramids of Egypt are not alone. The massive stone platforms of Baalbek, the perfectly fitted blocks of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, the stone circles of Nabta Playa in the Sahara, and even the mysterious Moai of Easter Island, they all seem to hum with an architectural resonance that defies simple explanation. Were these structures merely temples and monuments, or were they integral pieces of a larger machine? A machine that spanned continents, tuned to the earth itself? Ancient legends hint that they were more than stone. The Vedic texts of India speak of machines that ran not on fuel, but on cosmic resonance, the vibration of the universe itself. In Mesoamerica, myths describe a great heart of the sky that powered both life and destruction. Even in Plato's account of Atlantis, there is mention of a radiant source, a pillar of energy that connected heaven and earth. Each tale, in its own way, points to the possibility of a system lost to time, a system designed not only to generate power, but to shape reality itself. Some modern researchers have gone further, proposing that the Earth's natural ley lines, those invisible currents of electromagnetic energy that crisscross the planet, may have once been tapped, channeled, and amplified by human hands. Stone obelisks, crystal chambers, and pyramid networks could have acted as nodes in a vast planetary grid. The Earth itself transformed into a living engine. If such a machine existed, its implications are staggering. Imagine a world where energy flowed freely, not hoarded by empires or corporations, but drawn directly from nature, limitless and clean. Imagine a civilization unbound by scarcity, able to build, travel, and create without the weight of fuel or war over resources. To us, such a possibility feels like utopia. But history reminds us that every great gift carries a shadow. What if the final machine was not only a tool of creation, but also of destruction? What if its energy, misused, could unmake as easily as it could build? Legends of cataclysm, floods, fire from the sky, cities swallowed by the sea, may not be mere metaphors. They may be the echoes of civilizations that played with forces too great to control. Perhaps the very machine that allowed them to ascend was the same force that brought them to ruin. Here lies the most haunting possibility, that humanity did not simply forget these machines, but that someone or something deliberately erased them. The sheer scale of silence surrounding these legends is suspicious. Entire libraries burned, from Alexandria to Nalanda. Sacred texts locked away in Vatican vaults, never to be seen by public eyes. Ancient artifacts hidden in private collections, stripped from their cultural context. Could this be coincidence? Or has knowledge of the final machine been suppressed, hidden because its rediscovery would alter the very balance of power in our world? Those who peer too closely into this subject often find themselves confronted with resistance. Scholars dismissed, evidence ridiculed, discoveries buried under bureaucratic denial. The question is not whether the final machine existed, but why those in power fear the idea that it did. The modern age, for all its marvels, still struggles with the most basic question. Where does true energy come from? We burn, We split, we consume, we invent clever devices, but always within the narrow prison of scarcity. Yet ancient whispers tell us it doesn't have to be this way. They tell us of a time when energy was drawn not from destruction, but from harmony, from resonance, from alignment, from the invisible threads that stitch the universe together. And this is where the story turns from history into prophecy. For if such a machine once existed, it leaves us with a terrifying possibility that it could exist again. That hidden in plain sight, in the stones beneath our feet, in the myths we dismiss as fantasy, lies the blueprint for a technology that could either save us or end us. What would happen if humanity rediscovered it? Would we use it to heal the wounds we have carved into the earth, to free ourselves from endless wars over oil, gas, and power? Or would we repeat the mistakes of those who came before, weaponizing creation itself until it turned against us? Perhaps this is why the knowledge was buried. Not because it was false, but because it was too dangerous. Because the final machine is not just a relic of the past, but a test for the future. A mirror held to our species, asking whether we are worthy of its return. So we end where we began, with a whisper. A whisper from the ruins, from the myths, from the shadows of forbidden books. A whisper that suggests the story of human civilization is not a tale of progress from ignorance to knowledge, but a cycle of remembering and forgetting. We rise, we discover, we fall, and then we bury the evidence of what came before. The final machine may never be proven, and perhaps that is by design. But one truth remains. The greatest secrets are never truly lost. They are hidden, waiting for the moment when humanity dares to look beyond the veil and ask the most dangerous question of all. What if the legends were true?